What's happening, Sabres Mafia, Bills Mafia? Is there such thing as a Sabres Mafia? I think there is. If I were to go to any of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of, representing both Buffalo, both the Buffalo Sabres as well as the Buffalo Bills in tonight's podcast as well, with the cap to match the Boston Red Sox, my favorite baseball team. Love it or hate it, like it, learn it, know it. It's just the way that it is and the way that it's always going to be. In terms of yours truly, those are the three teams that I'll always root for: football, hockey, baseball, respectively. So I wanted to hop on the show tonight. Obviously, was looking to hop on a little bit earlier. I had some other things that I needed to get done first. So, of course, I greatly appreciate you guys hopping on the podcast tonight and providing me with a little bit of some questions to get to. And I want to start off with those questions first and foremost on the Thomas Take Sports podcast tonight. I let you guys know that I wanted to answer your questions. So you guys hopped on my Facebook, Ryan Thomas, of course, and you guys answered a lot of or asked me a lot of questions. And I want to get to them. So first off, Patrick Hughes, big time follower of mine. He said, what are some position battles that you are most excited to see play out in camp and preseason? Well, in terms of that question, Patrick, I appreciate you hopping on. As always, it's always a pleasure chatting with you all things Buffalo Bills. Going into the position battles, one that I'm curious to see how it shakes out would be the running back battle. If there is one, is there a running back battle out there for this trio of backs, actually quadruplet of backs? You have James Cook, you have Damian Harris, you have Nyheim Hines, and you have Latavius Murray, a veteran that the Bills made late in the offseason, right after the draft, I'd say. So late for free agency, right, to see a player of his name, his caliber come in and be thrown into that mix of backs that we have. But if it were me, I'd say running back would be one. I think James Cook has the advantage. I think Damian Harris might try to, spoil some of that. Potentially, we could see that. Whether we do, whether we don't, only time will tell. As well, I would say, honestly, a position that I'm really looking forward to seeing shake out is, and I'm going to say it, I'm going to say the tight end position. Dalton Kincaid, first-round draft choice, Dawson Knox. I mean, seeing which one has the better camp, I think both guys are looking at it like they're teammates of one another. They're going to support one another, but I know Dawson Knox saw that pick and thought, yeah, that's going to help us. It's going to help the team, but I want to still get my touches. That's how he should think. And I think that the tight end position will be one that'll be interesting just to see those two guys go head to head and see what that means to both players as far as, the talent of one another. Iron sharpens iron, so to speak, as well as the safety battle. A player that I really liked that Buffalo brought in this offseason was Taylor Rapp. I think he's going to have a really good season with the Bills. Thought he was a great addition to the team. And I think that's going to really show out and show up preseason, early on in the season and throughout the season. I think he's going to show a lot. Adam Huxell asked me a great question. I love chatting with Adam as well. He asked me, what NHL team of the past can you look at for the Sabres model of success? He says he likes the 2010 Chicago Blackhawks. I'd say like the 2010 to 2013, 2014 Chicago Blackhawks would be a good blueprint to follow. I would also say, Adam, in terms of your question, I would also say the Pittsburgh Penguins, right when they got Crosby, Malkin. I think so many other teams have tried to follow that template that Pittsburgh was able to establish. We've even tried it. We came up short with the whole Mick Eichel derby and eventually Eichel, and we know how that turned out. Right now, though, I really love the direction that the Sabres are headed in. I am going to give a lot of thoughts on the Sabres throughout this podcast, but to answer your question, Adam, I'd say the Blackhawks and the Pittsburgh Penguins would be another example of what I'd like the Sabres to try to build. And I think that they're on their way. It's going to take a little bit longer than what people think, but I think they're on their way. Salvatore Angelo, he asks, is this the last year of Belichick's coaching career if they miss the playoffs? I think it could be, Sal. I really do. Post the Tom Brady era, I'm really shocked, to your point, Salvatore, sorry about that. Really shocked at this point, Salvatore, in terms of the fact that Belichick is still around, and you see a little bit of desperation, a little bit of going back to the old well in terms of the coaching hires that they've had or lack thereof. I really was quite shocked, frankly, that they made the decision to go out and bring back Bill O'Brien. We know how that worked. We know how that didn't work. As I toy with this background here, we know how that worked. We know how that didn't work. And to go back to that, I know that Bill O'Brien had that relationship, obviously, with Mac Jones, and that's important to Bill Belichick. But to me, I would have went a different route. I would have went a little younger, a little fresher in terms of the offensive coordinator position. But really, since Tom Brady left the building, it's been very hard for Bill Belichick to find that guy, to find that offensive coordinator that could really help Mac Jones. And I think Mac Jones can actually play. I'm one of the few people that actually believes that Mac Jones could be a legitimate quarterback in this league. I think the coaching, the hires have greatly failed his development over the course of the first 2-3 years of his career. And really, he's regressed almost every year for that reason. Coming out of Bama, I thought he'd be a top 10 pick. He was not. And I felt like that really helped New England. I was shocked when he fell in the middle of the first round of the New England Patriots. I thought that he was a great pick for any team that needed a quarterback. I rated him as my third best quarterback in that draft. I had obviously Fields was my number 2. I can't remember who my number 1 was that year. Might have been obviously Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. Those are my top 3. Might have actually had Jones number 2. I'd have to go back and check that now that you asked me that question. But I really liked Mac Jones, and I still do. I think he could be pretty good in this league. He's not mobile, but he's extremely accurate, and I think he's got a good touch on his passes. That's what I've seen, at least from his time at Bama. So I'm hoping that he can make a little bit of a rebound, because I think people are a little bit premature in terms of their criticism of Mac Jones. Now, I don't hope for too good of a rebound for obvious reasons, but football-wise, I like Mac Jones a lot. So if, in fact, Bill Belichick doesn't lead the Patriots to the playoffs, I think this could be the end, and maybe they're just laying the groundwork for Bill O'Brien to take the reins over. That was supposed to be the position that was Josh McDaniels' position. He left to go to Vegas to coach the Raiders. I don't think that's going to work out, just judging from what I've seen thus far. It's been a complete dumpster fire. So we'll see what happens there, but maybe Bill O'Brien thought, hey, this is my next chance to throw my hat into the ring, so to speak. So, yeah, I think you could be on the money there, Sal, in terms of your assessment. Could be Bill Belichick's last season. He's done enough. He's got nothing to prove. There's guys that he coached against that have been long retired. Obviously can coach a lot longer than you can play. So that's what Bill's done. But if it were me, I would hang him up if he doesn't make the playoffs. But will Bill Belichick go out like that? That's the next question. So the headline of this podcast is that the Sabres are making moves, and Josh Allen says relax on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast in regards to Stephon Diggs. And I wanted to break that down, that whole, interview, that whole exchange, rather. We'll talk about that tonight, as well as breaking down the Sabres moves. Now, let's get to that first and foremost in terms of breaking down this 2023 offseason for the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres have had several free agent signings. First off, Eric Johnson, a 1-year deal worth $3.25 million. The veteran defenseman longtime Colorado Avalanche defenseman. Connor Clifton coming from Boston to Buffalo. It's always nice when the Sabres can kind of steal away a player from the Boston Bruins. It's the only team in Boston that I hate. And then the Dustin Tokarski move, of course, Dustin Tokarski, tongue twister there, a 1-year, 2-way contract worth as much as $775,000. Devin Cooley also coming to Rochester for a 1-year, 2-way deal with the same contract. And then Justin Richards, a 1-year, 2-way contract worth the same amount as well. Now, the Sabres also, they did re-sign Tyson Jost. I really liked Jost when he came in. As well, they re-signed Kale Clegg, 2-way deal, as well as re-signed Zemgus Girgensons. One guy that has not been re-signed yet is Vinny Hinostroza. He is still a free agent. So obviously, you know, as I look at these moves, they're not moves that are startling, but the two in particular that I'm really excited about, that I'm really happy about, are the moves of Erik Johnson and, of course, Connor Clifton. Now, a lot of Sabres fans felt like the Sabres were a little bit unbalanced on defense this year, and I think they're right, for the simple reason that not only do you have Dahlin and Power, they're going to be here for quite some time. I expect both players to sign a long-term extension within the next month. Dahlin, an 8-year deal, Power a 6, 7, potentially 8-year deal as well. Power's not in as much of a rush as Dahlin is to get a deal done because Power still has some time left on his rookie contract, wanting to play that out and then test the market in terms of working with the team, renegotiating with the team to see where his value is. But to have a guy that you can pair with Owen Power and Erik Johnson that is without a doubt one of the better, you know, veteran defensemen, I should say, in the free agent market was pretty big. And to hear Erik Johnson kind of echo what has been thought by myself and what has been thought by a lot of players in recent interviews, whether they're the opposing players playing against the Sabres or obviously guys in the Sabres locker room, it's a lot easier to hear the guys in the Sabres locker room say, we're coming around, we're getting better, we're improving. That's lip service to the fans. But to hear it from players that played against us last year that are now signing with us in Erik Johnson, basically Erik Johnson stating that most guys around the NHL understand the simple fact that the Buffalo Sabres are getting better, that the Buffalo Sabres are building something, and teams around the league are starting to take notice. They're starting to see it with the trade of Jack Eichel to Vegas. You know, I want to touch on this too, and this is something that I think is very important right now, especially. I go through, you know, Twitter and Facebook and read a lot of comments, just interaction from Sabres fans amongst one another. And a lot of Sabres fans are real salty that Jack Eichel won the Stanley Cup with Vegas. And I kind of understand that. It wasn't easy for me to watch Eichel hoist the cup wondering what if, and knowing that, you know, he had the things that he had to say, and he's just not really a classy individual. So it's hard to see a guy win when you know he's just a downright scumbag, frankly. But all that being said, Jack Eichel was right about one simple fact, and it's the fact that, okay, the neck injury was one thing, but Eichel said prior to the neck injury, it seemed as if they were rebuilding, and he felt like the trading him away, would allow the Sabres to rebuild, truly rebuild, provide a package of players that would allow the Sabres to get better quicker. Maybe use me, as his words stated in an interview with Elliot Friedman last year, use me as a way to get a package of players that is going to make this team better. He was right. So to say that this trade didn't work out far too soon, just because Eichel won the cup, cup aside, looking at how it benefited both sides, not including the cup, Vegas was in the right for going after Jack Eichel. They had pieces around Eichel already that would help Eichel to where Eichel didn't have to be the guy like he was in Buffalo. And then the Sabres return of Alex Tuch and Peyton Krebs, as well as the first-round draft choice, which I believe was Noah Osland, who is highly rated in this farm system that obviously Austin was great in the system that he's in right now, working, getting better, developing. He could be a starter on this team in 2 years for all we know. Chad Greenway was also a pick that was used to trade for Chad Greenway and acquire him, and he's somebody that Donnie Granato greatly believes in. So that trade really has helped accelerate the rebuild, if you will, or the revamp of this team, because Alex Tuch is a 25-minute-a-night player when healthy on that first line with Jeff Skinner and Tage Thompson. So to say that, okay, yeah, we lost Ryan O'Reilly, we traded Jack Eichel, but we traded O'Reilly for essentially the biggest piece of that trade that we got back was Tage Thompson, who's arguably the best player on the team. We traded Jack Eichel for Alex Tuch, who is arguably the second best player on the team. So I can't really complain about where the Sabres are at in terms of what they've done over the last, couple years. The only complaint that I have is I wonder if it's enough. I simply wonder, is it enough? Did Kevin Adams do enough? There is a player on this team that might be the third best player on the team, projection-wise, that could only get better if he was surrounded by adequate talent and could be just as productive as Tage Thompson, just as productive as Alex Tuch. And to me, that player is Dylan Cousins. And looking at the Sabres roster right now and who they have, who they don't have, I think Dylan Cousins is the guy that actually, I guess I could say is diminished in terms of what he brings to the table if they don't build around him more. I mean, you need more there around Dylan Cousins outside of Jack Quinn and J.J. Peterka. With all due respect, J.J. Peterka, very green, very young, and not many games in this league. Dylan Cousins has played years, consecutive years, seasons in this league, and he's gotten better each year. Jack Quinn was the next piece that they were kind of putting around Dylan Cousins, and Jack Quinn is now out for the foreseeable future, out indefinitely with an Achilles injury. So the Sabres had talked about trading Victor Olofsson. I don't think you should now. I think you might need to hold on to him just due to the fact that he's really one of the only surefire goal-scoring pieces that the Sabres have to put around Dylan Cousins in terms of the second line. Cousins is not a first-line guy yet. He could be, but he's a great centerman that I think is only getting better and has that grit to his game that they don't really have on the team right now. So putting that, you don't want to mess up the Skinner, Tuch, Thompson line. You do want to put more around Dylan Cousins, and I think that is the one piece that I would love the Sabres to kind of add to, and I don't know if they will. And if they don't, that could be the difference between whether they make or miss the playoffs this year. So our next topic that a lot of Sabres fans kind of mulled over and debated was whether or not the Sabres should actually be in the goaltender market for a guy like Connor Hellebuck, John Gibson, a veteran goaltender, a Varlamov, some of these older guys that have started and have, kind of had their day in the NHL, but, basically you're replacing a Craig Anderson with another one, essentially, with one of those moves. But as of right now, it appears as if the tandem in the net will be Devin Levi and UPL. And this is the youngest goalie tandem in the National Hockey League by a wide margin. And not only is it the youngest, but it's one of the most inexperienced goalie tandems that I think the NHL has seen in the history of the league, between two goalies being this young, this green, as far as the NHL level. UPL's been around for the past couple seasons. This past season was a season where he had the majority of his starts, career NHL starts, the biggest sample size that we could look at and judge positively. Took some good things, negatively, some not so good things. Hot or cold was UPL. And that's not necessarily what you want out of your backup. You want your backup to win you, games that your starter couldn't play in, right? That's the idea. When you have a starter that you want him to be backed up and relieved, essentially, by a decent backup. And that's what the Sabres had back when Hasek was in the net with Marty Biron. And then on the flip side of things, when Marty was the starter, Ryan Miller coming along. Then Miller took the job from Biron, and then it was Miller and Biron. You had some decent goalies in there backing up Ryan Miller here and there, but obviously Ryan Miller was the man. He didn't really necessarily need a backup to play in 30, 35 games. He was playing in 50, 60 games. Those guys don't come around often, and that's why those guys are getting their number retired, hung up in the rafters. That's why those guys are looked at as future Hall of Famers, and I do believe Ryan Miller will be one day, maybe sooner rather than later, next season, maybe the year after that. Is Devin Levi that guy? We cannot judge Devin Levi off of that small a sample size of games, 8 to 10 games off the top of my head. I believe that's what it was, for us to say that he is worthy of that shine. That is high praise. As I just mentioned, we're talking about the franchise leader in pretty much every statistical category outside of Hasek, beating Hasek in a few of those categories, and Hasek is largely believed to be one of the best goaltenders of all time. Is Devin Levi in that hierarchy? I'll tell you this, just in terms of what I saw firsthand watching the Sabres take the ice multiple times with Devin Levi in net. I did see a young goalie that had a rare athleticism, a rare quickness, a rare awareness in the crease and even out of the crease, trying to, retrieve the puck and dish it out to the D, dish it out to the forward that was there in front of him. Devin Levi is a very, very curious goaltender prospect that I haven't seen the likes of in quite some time. There's only a few guys right now that have broken out as great goalie prospects that still hold a little bit of that shine. The last one that I remember was Carter Hart, and he has struggled over these last few years. And I use him as an example for an obvious reason. Because Carter Hart was really thrown into the lion's den, the wolf's nest, bird's nest, whatever you want to call it. He was thrown in. He was just tossed in, hey, kid, have at it. This is your crease. Do what you can with it. For a while it worked, and then the Flyers got worse, and he got worse along with it. His confidence, I think, is diminished. I think a lot of things are going on in the head of Carter Hart right now, and the fact that the Philadelphia Flyers have had him on the trade block for what seems like 2 years now, that's the situation that you want to avoid, painting yourself into that corner if you are the Buffalo Sabres. So are the Sabres doing that by just rolling the dice with Levi and UPL? You have to throw in there, the headline is Levi and UPL, but you still have potentially Eric Comrie, who could be that 15-game starter while Levi starts X and UPL starts Y over the remaining 82 games in an 82-game NHL schedule. But the one problem that I have with, the opinion of, well, hey, is Levi ready to man the crease? The only way you find out if Devin Levi is actually ready to be in the crease is to put him in the crease multiple nights in a row. And if he can handle the 30 shots a night, 25, 30, 35 shots, God forbid anything more than 35, he can handle that, then that is the starting goalie that you had to sell your soul for, essentially. It felt like forever we were waiting for this kid to come along, and he was highly touted out of Northwestern, winning all the awards, leading Northwestern, carrying the team on his back. That was college. This is the NHL. This is the big boys league, the men among boys league that, Devin Levi is partaking in now. But a part of me just wants to see Levi get thrown out there. And then another part of me wishes that they had a better veteran to take the spot. I don't think the problem necessarily is whether Levi is ready or not. I think the problem is necessarily whether or not UPL can be consistent. That's the big issue for me. If Levi is thrown out there as the starter, can he be backed up by somebody that can actually help the Sabres win? That drop-off was a precipitous one, even in a short time frame that Levi was out there in comparison to UPL. UPL was really struggling, coincidentally, maybe not, but once Levi was given the reins to play some games in a row, when UPL did come back in, he looked shell shocked out there to me, and maybe that was a little bit of mismanagement of UPL by the Sabres as well. I think you got to look at this year as a clean slate year for both of those guys, and just have at it. And I think that's what they're doing, and I can appreciate that because it's consistent. It's consistent with the message of the team that Kevin Adams has provided to the fans, that they're going to look at every young player that they have in this system and find out just what they're capable of. And rather than stunting their growth or getting in the way of their progression with a veteran that is not long term in the team's plans anyway, you might as well see what they have. I agree with that. I think that there is something to be said for the consistency that the Sabres have had in terms of their message overall within the team, within the organization, that they want to see this youth through, and they want to do it in a form and fashion that allows these guys to play. Far too long were we in the years of Regier and Murray and Botterill, where they just didn't want to call up the top prospects, and there weren't many, and they didn't want to call those ones up. Now we got a lot of prospects, one of the best pipelines in the National Hockey League, maybe the best. And I think Kevin Adams is at a point where he wants to see these guys play in the blue and gold. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them. And these two being those some of them. So I like it. I like it a lot. Now, shifting gears here, going to, of course, the Buffalo Bills here. We will shift gears to the Bills, of course. Really pumped up for this kind of take on all things that are going on right now at One Bills Drive. Right now, I think most recently, there's really only one headline to go off of in terms of recently. Right now, we're looking at a real lean time in terms of the Bills and the headlines and everything that those represent. So right now, we're really just passing time, right? We're just waiting for the season to start. And a lot of these headlines are stupid. A lot of these headlines are boring. They're just fodder, but I don't think this one is. Josh Allen is annoyed, and frankly, I don't blame him. Now, let me tell you why Josh Allen's annoyed. He's annoyed with the fact that rather than talking about what the Bills need to do to go from point A, the playoffs, to point B, winning a Super Bowl, everybody's asking him about Stephon Diggs and why was Stephon Diggs not available at the first day of minicamp. That happened a few weeks back. I covered it. I said, watch. He will be at the next practice. Everybody's going to look like they blew this out of proportion, and everybody's going to look like they jumped the gun. And they did. Stephon Diggs was at the next practice. Everybody jumped the gun. It wasn't a big deal. There was something that happened, yes, but it wasn't lingering. It didn't create a long-term, long-lasting issue for either side, whether it was Diggs, McDermott, or Diggs, or Allen, whoever it may be, Diggs and somebody. We're not even going to speculate on that because that's just a complete waste of time. What I'd rather do is literally talk about the obvious, and that Josh Allen is annoyed, and I don't blame him. Right now, there are a lot of people in the media that are looking at the hierarchy of the NFL, and they don't believe in the Bills. They think that the Bills are yesterday's news, that they were overrated last year and they didn't live up to the hype, and that there's other teams out there, even new teams out there that were not even talked about remotely at all last year, that hold a higher threat, a higher chance of winning the Super Bowl in comparison to the Bills. Ask yourselves, which teams are they talking about? They're talking about Miami. They're talking about the Jets. Two teams in the Bills division, mind you, as well as the Jacksonville Jaguars, as well as the Chargers. I've heard it all. I've heard pretty much any team but the Bills talked about. The Bengals, the Chiefs, of course, the Ravens. The Bills have been the least talked about team in the AFC this offseason. And I make an argument quite possibly in the entire AFC. And I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. Now, are there sites, stations, channels, networks, whatever you want to call it, that say that the Bills are a top team in the league? They do. But are they saying the same tune that they were last year? They are definitely not. And part of that is the fact that the Bills didn't deliver last year. Don't get me wrong. That Cincinnati game was absolutely terrible. Probably one of the worst games I've ever watched. But when I look at the team, knowing and understanding the talent that they have and knowing and understanding what they've done this offseason, I've talked about it quite a few times, but this could quite frankly be the best offseason that Brandon Beane has ever had. And you might look at me and kind of perk your ears like a puppy dog when I say that. But when you look at the cap situation that they had heading into this offseason, the amount of moves that they made, the amount of ads that they made, the amount of gaps that were filled in terms of the roster, I thought Brandon Beane did a hell of a job. The question is, can Sean McDermott coach up these guys to the best of his ability to get them to where they need to go? And I think that that's a worthy question because this team has knocked on the door once or twice, and they've just turned around and walked away when someone went to answer the door. It's a very strange analogy, but you work all that way to get all the way down that road just to get to that house. You knock on the door, you wait a couple seconds, but just as somebody comes to answer, you're already at the end of the driveway. It's like, what the hell? Why'd you walk all the way down to my house just to knock on the door and walk away? That's how I feel about the Bills. I feel like they have done a lot of things right to get to the proverbial house. They've knocked on the door, and then they've just turned around and walked away. And they need to knock that door in, kick it down, and sit down on the couch and put their feet up and say, this is my house now. That's what needs to take place. Whether it does or doesn't, I think there's a few reasons for that. I've talked about that. There'd be real reasons to believe that if they don't improve upon where they were last year, criticism is warranted. It is warranted and it is worthy in terms of Sean McDermott. I think I'm at that point. It took me a while to get to that point, but I'm at that point. Especially if they have a stinker like they did against Cincinnati, or they have a debacle like they did against Kansas City with the 13 seconds. But Josh Allen is annoyed specifically because he is the best player on the team, no doubt about it. He is the franchise quarterback. So not only is he the best player on the roster, he's at the most important position on the team. He's really the only guy that has made the Bills successful in terms of as a wider brand. He's been able to attract casual people to the Buffalo Bills that were not Bills fans. He's made the Bills relevant again. So anyone that asks him these questions, I don't want to say it's disrespectful. He's an athlete. He should be asked whatever questions the media wants to ask him, but it's silly. At this point, you see the guys standing next to each other in minicamp. You know the guys are in constant communication. There's no need to drudge this stuff up again. But with storylines like this, the only good thing about it is we're here July 5th, 2023. When you have storylines like this that they can distract you from the main objective to a team that's not that great, I think the Bills are going to use this to their advantage. I think the Bills are going to use this as motivation. Now, whether that leads to wins or not, maybe not. I'm not going to go that far. But what I am going to say is leading into training camp, I think the Bills are noticing that they're not being talked about like they were last year. And they're just smiling ear to ear internally, willing to prove it once again, that they do belong in the Super Bowl. They can get there. They should get there. The question is, will they get there? And storylines like this, just fodder. There's no need for it. But then again, controversy sells, and the media doesn't have much to do here in July of the 2023 NFL offseason. So there you have it. That's the Thomas Take Sports Podcast for tonight. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. The Sabres making some moves, adding to their D with Eric Johnson and as well Connor Clifton, a 28-year-old defenseman that I'm really excited to see paired with the group that they have. Really pumped for Sabres hockey to get started here in October, as well as Buffalo Bills training camp in a few weeks here getting rolling. So, of course, stay tuned for more as I'll be back this Sunday as well as next week, next Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's go Buffalo and go Bills.